Welcome to LSC. It's Sports Time. I'm your host, Bob Hintz. Today I have a very special guest in Walter Brower, head basketball coach at Hampton High School, won a couple of state championships, over 500 wins, but we're going to get into all that stuff a little bit later. Welcome, Walter.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks.
Glad to have you here. First of all, let's go back. You're not from Virginia. You originally were born and raised in?
Well, I was born and raised in a small place called Siler City, North Carolina. Less than 15,000 people and small single-A school.
Okay. Yeah. So then when you were growing up, then you probably played more than just one sport.
I played 3 sports. I played football, basketball, and baseball, and really enjoyed all 3.
Did you have a favorite back then, or was you just, like when I grew up, you played whatever the season was?
Well, I played baseball more so than anything else, and I really loved that. And I kept the TV on watching baseball games. My parents didn't like it. You know how it was back then, one TV.
One TV, yeah, I know how that works.
Yeah, I really love baseball.
Okay, so now after you graduated from high school, you went to North Carolina A&T.
Right.
Played a couple years of baseball there, not basketball, not football, but you concentrated because your love evidently was baseball.
It was, and you know, I'd become so involved in baseball. Even though I played football and basketball, I just wanted to give it a try.
Right. Well, tell me a little bit about that experience, because but you were pretty close to home. I mean, we're not talking like you got 4 or 5 hours away from home.
No, I was 30 minutes away from home, and then something came up. You know, I could easily get home, and a lot of my friends, in fact, the people that graduated with me were there, so it was easy to come and go.
So it was a pretty good experience then, as far as if you got homesick, you could get home and get home mama's cooking.
Oh yeah, that was a big plus.
Well, I know how it is when you love mama's cooking. You graduated. How did you get up to Hampton? Did they recruit you up here? I know when I was at East Carolina, I was recruited to come up and teach in Hampton.
My wife applied up here. She got the job, and then we decided to come on. In fact, when I first came to Hampton, I didn't have a teaching job.
Wow.
And we went down to the school board office, and I got a teaching job that same day.
Wow, that was something. And where did you go teach?
Lindsay, junior high at that time.
Yeah, they didn't. In fact, in junior high, we had the sports.
Right.
Rather than what they've got the middle school now. So you went over there as not as a baseball coach, or?
No, I went over there as a science teacher. And I taught science for 2 years, and then was moved down to the phys ed department.
Okay. And then when did you start coaching?
Well, I started coaching my second year there. I started helping with baseball.
Right.
And the very next year, I stepped right into basketball because the head job came over.
All right, so when you were there and now you're going to play basketball, you have played basketball, you didn't play it in college, but evidently you had a love for basketball, or you wouldn't have taken the job.
Right. I'd been involved in basketball more so than anything else since I went to college. In fact, the guy that called my high school games was A&T's A&T College's head coach. And I got to know him real well. In fact, he married my neighbor.
Wow. So you had a connection with the basketball then?
Right. I had a connection with the basketball, and I really started to learn more and more and more about it.
Okay, so now learning basketball, you have to go to camps. And you told me you have gone to camp down North Carolina for how many years?
About 18 or 19 years. I've been down to the basketball clinic, and in fact, I walk in, one of the first things they asked me, do you have another Ron Curry? I said, I wish.
Well, you may have one. We'll talk about Allen a little later on. But so how did you develop your style of coaching? Did you get it from going down to the clinics? Did you get it from the basketball coach at A&T, or what?
The basketball coach at A&T was the one that really got me involved, because he taught the course about coaching basketball.
Right.
And he gave us a lot of information. And from there, I, of course, was always watching North Carolina on TV. And then, of course, the UCLA situation came along with all of those wins. And I really, you know, just fell in love with basketball.
Right. Now, as you were going with the basketball and learning, were you a tough disciplinarian? Did you expect your kids to, you know, not a horse around there in practice and all, but be serious about the game?
I've always, you know, been sort of a tough disciplinarian because I've watched so many coaches. One of them was Bob Knight. I don't agree with everything that he does, but, you know, he's a very tough disciplinarian. He did it one way, but Coach Wooden was totally different. He was easygoing, but took no mess from nobody.
Right, and that's what was very surprising. You have two polar opposites in personalities, John Wooden and Bob Knight, but yet they're both successful.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So you must have picked up on what was good because you became very successful at Hampton High School.
Well, I you know, knew that the situation had to be disciplined, and, you know, it wasn't like it is today. When I first started, it was easy to discipline kids because they would basically do what you want to, and it wasn't a whole lot of freelance like it is now.
Right.
And, you know, I more or less stuck to my guns, and the kids knew that I was going to have a discipline program, and it worked out.
Well, that's good. So this, do you think that because they see a lot of it on TV with the colleges and the pros, they get to where they want to do more one-on-one?
That's one of the things, and of course, seeing pro ball, too much pro ball,
right?
And they just figure that they can do some of the things that these guys do, and these guys have been playing ball and working on different things for years.
Right. All right. Now, when you first started coaching, you had a young man that was on your team. They ended up leaving and doing what I thought you would end up doing as a baseball coach in a college.
Right. One of my first players was a guy named Chris Finwood, and he was a heck of an athlete. He was a shooting guard on the basketball team, and he played shortstop on the baseball team.
Right.
And you know, he did real well. And when he left, he stayed with baseball, and now he's a head baseball coach in Florida.
How about that? Now, you went down to the clinics, but you took your kids to the camp at Old Dominion.
Right.
It's closer?
Right. It's closer, and, you know, if something came up, of course, they were close to the parents, and we could get in touch with the parents. So I took them over there, and, you know, we went through the camp, and, of course, we played X number of games, and they would always have a championship game.
Right. Now, was Webb over there, or was Sonny Allen there? Who did you get to see over there when you went to those camps?
Paul Webb, and he would have, of course, his coaching staff, and he would always bring in speakers and so forth. But it was run by Paul Webb, and,
right.
You know.
And when you go to the camps, for some of these youngsters who have not been to a camp yet, and if they go to a camp, they go. You concentrate on drills. What do they concentrate on?
Well, individual drills first, and then team play.
Okay.
And of course, they would have contests dealing with these drills, and it really helped the kids out a whole lot.
So there's competition going on all the time.
Competition going on all the time.
Right.
And one of the things that I wanted to do when I first took these kids over there, make sure we stayed disciplined. Right. And they did, except for one night before the championship game. We had a coach's party, and then I went back to the dorm, and two of my kids had sneaked out. So we decided these two seniors wasn't going to play at all the next day during the championship. And I had them sit up in the bleachers and watch the game, and they did. And of course, the other kids gave them a hard time because they knew what had happened.
Right.
But this carried over, you know, into the season at Hampton High.
Well, kids are going to talk about it.
Oh yeah.
And they're going to know if we mess up, we're going to be sitting in the stands or sitting on the bench.
Oh yes. Well, the word was, and sometimes I wish it could be this way, Coach Brower's way or the highway.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I understand that, but you got to have set rules, and if you're not solid with the rules, then the other kids are going to respond to that. Well, he didn't discipline these guys. Well, I can do some stuff.
Oh yes, you've got to set rules. I'm a stickler for time. You better be on time, but not you're going to have to do some drills.
Right.
And regardless what the situation is, unless you got a pretty good excuse, you've got to be on time.
Right. I know Coach Smith is that way. When I had Myron Newsom in here, he said that's one thing he learned about Coach Smith. He said, you're on time.
Right.
You don't be late for practice. Now, you have accomplished something only 4 of the coaches in the state have done, and that's win 500 games. Wow, we need a big banner in the gym for that. I mean, that's unbelievable. Talk a little bit about that accomplishment.
Well, I've been blessed with some good ball players, and ball players that went along with what I wanted to in the system and really worked hard.
Right.
And I've been really blessed by having those ball players. Plus, I've had good parents, that did the things that we needed to do as far as keeping the team together.
Right.
And one of my assistant coaches, Eric Brown, who's been with me and also played for me, gets home even time to time, said, Coach, you didn't let us get away with stuff like these kids are getting away with. And he told the guys, we practiced 3 hours. It wasn't no, you guys now practicing 2 hours and sometimes less than that, but we had it down to the point where, okay, I know we're in better shape than anybody else. Fourth quarter is going to belong to us. And, it worked out a lot of times like that because I had drilled over and over and over and over certain things.
Right.
And it wasn't a whole lot of different offenses. We've run this man-to-man passing game since I started. And
right.
I'll go to it a whole lot right now. But disciplined kids in a disciplined program and working hard to get positive results.
Right. Talk a little bit about that passing game, because I think you have got that down. You as a coach have got it down, and you get it to your kids. They run that game. They run their sets. I just love to watch the way they go through the sets.
Well, the passing game is a motion offense.
Right.
Where you do 3 things. You pass, cut to the basket, pass, you pick away, and right now we've put more passing and screening on the ball. When I first started, we didn't screen on the ball. We always screened away.
Right. That's when I was coaching. You screened away, and that was the philosophy.
Right.
That I learned going to clinics and to camps.
And the other thing is you always play inside out. Of course, I don't have the luxury now because I don't have a big guy yet.
Right.
But all of the coaches that I talked to over the years and clinics and things that I went to, they always preached you play inside out. And there wasn't a whole lot of this dribble drive stuff like they do now
Right.
in kick. But I've been successful with it, so I'm sticking with it.
Well, why not? If it worked, 500 wins, it's got to be pretty good. Now, when you first started coaching and you got these guys in, a coach can make a team better, but if you got one guy that stands out, he can make other kids better on the team, can't he?
Oh yeah, well I've had a few standout ball players, and the players will look up to him.
Right.
In fact, I've had one that wasn't such what we call a big standout, but they looked up to him too. So, a kid like Ron Curry was, he could have been great in tennis.
Right.
So,
he was just a good athlete.
Just a good athlete, and the kids more or less looked up to him, and that was a big plus. And the same thing with Kevin Swan. They looked up to him. And, in certain situations when the game was on the line, hey, this is the player that they went to.
Right. And the kids have confidence in him too, not only coaches, but the kids,
right.
didn't they?
The kids have confidence in him. And, just like the situation down in Raleigh during the Christmas tournament.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
When we were tied at the end of the game with 8 seconds to go, Ron, before I could get the players in the huddle, said, "Coach, just get me the ball." And you're going to get the ball, son. So I sat down and tinkered with a play that we'd been running all the time and just made a few changes. And second pass in, he got the ball, boom, jump shot, ball came over. So
it's amazing how a kid he wanted to take take that on his shoulders.
Right.
Some kids would shy away from it because of the pressure, but Ronald seemed to live on that, didn't he?
Yeah, he lived on the pressure situations. He wanted the ball, and right now, you know your kids pretty well on the team, and you know who does not want the ball in pressure situations.
And there's some you don't want to have the ball.
That is so true.
I mean, I'd say it works both ways, because I can remember this. Oh, don't give him the ball.
No.
Because first of all, he can't shoot a foul shot. He's going to lose it if he's trying to dribble. So, but now let's go back to your first state championship. You went through the regular season, you made it to the regionals, and you run into Maury in the regional finals.
Right. And it was a tough ball game that went down to the wire. We ended up losing by something like 6, 8 points. And of course, if you get to the regional finals, both teams advance to the state playoffs. And I felt that we played well enough to win the game that night, and we just, had a few bumps in the road. So we were looking forward to playing them again in the state playoffs, but it didn't work out that way. We weren't in the same bracket.
Well, we're talking about Jack Baker, the coach over there at Maury. But now you're in the same bracket with the team that everybody thinks is going to win the state. We're talking about South Lakes. They had a tremendous junior in Grant Hill, who, by the way, is still playing pro ball at this time. So talk about that game, because that game, to me, was a championship game.
Yeah, well, we sat there and scouted after we won our first game. And I watched them and I said, my God, how in the world are we going to rebound with them? They had 3 guys that had double-figure rebound.
Wow.
In that game. And, after our game, we went back as a coaching staff and sat down and said, okay, we're going to work on rebounding tomorrow morning. And we went over to a high school, we were able to get in, and we worked rebounding, boxing out, and, just mental toughness is what it takes to do that.
And basics, too.
Basics, right.
Blocking out is basic. Talk about some of those big guys you had on that team then.
Well, I had Aaron Mundy, Eric Hunter, and during that time I went with a kid named Cedric Williams, a small forward. But I also had 2 guys off the bench, Lonnie Mann and Mark Ash. So we could rebound, give the ones that's in the game a little rest, and then come back with some more rebounders. And it worked out, and it was just a matter of being mentally tough. And Eric Hunter might have been the mentally toughest kid I've ever had. And man, he went to war. I tell you, because I would never forget in the last few minutes of the game, they were at the free throw line. And he hits his hand, takes his hand, whap, slammed down on the floor like Duke does and said, let's go. And man, we pull away from him. I tell you, it's those kids just believed in themselves.
An early version of Ron Curry. And the reason I say that, because he was also quarterback and won a state championship at Hampton High as a quarterback. But in the first half of that ball game, Grant Hill gets 20 points. So you're at halftime, you got to make some adjustments.
Well, the thing is, this is a guy that's 6'8". We don't have anybody to match up with a guy that can play, that's 6'8", can play inside and outside. So you just play him as tough as you can and hope. There's no way. I was more concerned about Rob Robinson and the other big kids in rebounding. So I knew that our kids wasn't going to give up. They were going to play tough. And, it just happened, things just happened to go our way in the second half.
Well, Kevin was telling me that Eric went up to you and says, let me guard him, Coach.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that type thing. See, you've got to have guys that will take the challenge. Going back to that Christmas tournament, Ron guarded the top ball player in every game that we played. And it was one of those things where right now I don't like to put my best offensive player on the other team's toughest player.
Right.
But he would take the challenge, and you know, it's one of those things that I would say you're born with.
Right.
Because a lot of people don't want to do that. But you know, the very next year, we faced Grant Hill again up at William and Mary, and I played a 6'3" kid, Jermaine Golson, on him because now he was playing point guard. So.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, I was so amazed when I was talking to Kevin. He was talking about that championship game, and he said it was just like Eric said, okay, we're going to win this. He was not going to allow your team to lose.
Right. He was, as I said, very mentally tough, and he'd been on that football team and won, and he knew that you had to be mentally tough. And he was, you know, type kid that the other guys would follow. You know, he would get on guys like Aaron Monday and Lonnie man, you got to do so-and-so, we got to do so-and-so. And, you know, I would love to have another one like that.
Well, see, he wasn't one of your captains, but the guys listened to him, didn't they?
They listened to him. They knew. They knew that he was mentally tough and he was going to get the job done, and they listened. You know, as I said, I would love to have another.
Yeah, I can see that. All right, now let's go to your next state championship. Ronald Curry's on it, but he also has a cousin on there.
Yeah.
Muffin. We call him Muffin.
Yeah,
it's Mondo.
Muffin, Mondo Curry, and he was a defensive specialist. Yeah. We would always put him on the toughest guard, which was a luxury, which would, you know, give Ronald a break. Right. And we would have him sit on the bench and watch.
That was the point, yeah.
And watch the toughest guard, and then we would have him to go in there and guard him. And he would take the challenge. And in the semifinals, he took a charge at a crucial situation in the game, and that turned out to, you know, to be the thing that actually won the game for us.
Right.
And it was simply him sitting there after figuring, okay, I can handle this guy. And then he went in early, and then he came back, oh, wait a minute, I don't know. And then he talked to the coaches, and they said, I'll sit here and watch. And then he figured the guy out.
He was basically a student of the game as a player. It wasn't a starter a lot, but to sit there and watch the best offensive player or the best guard on their team, and that was his challenge?
Right, Muffin didn't want to start.
And that's something, that's unusual, isn't it?
Right, it's very unusual. He wanted to come off the bench because he knew he did a good job coming off the bench, and I had to convince him his senior year, man, we need you in the starting lineup. And, you know, he did well his senior year, and we did well in the regionals then.
Right. Now, if you were to look at your years at Hampton High School, if you could put that in perspective, how would you explain to somebody what it's like coaching at Hampton?
Well, my biggest challenge when I first started over there was getting the kids to play two sports, because in the beginning, most of them just played football. Right. And I got them to come out and to be okay in a situation where they were successful. And it carried over, because I started out with a group that was pretty good, and then we had some years where we fell off, and then we were able to pick it up again. I remember, I think it was '87 when we first went to the regionals. Right. And ran into a guy called Alonzo Mourning. I will never forget that.
That's somebody to run into.
Yeah, and you know, but this was the first group, and I had tough kids like John Scott, Brooke Harris, David Keeter. I don't know if you remember David Keeter or not, those type kids, and they got us into the second game of the regional playoffs. And looked like after that, the kids just figured, okay, man, we can advance farther and farther and farther along. Okay. And again, like I said, I had good kids that worked. They worked and they listened. And you know, that's more than a big plus.
Yeah, that is plus. What changes have you seen in basketball since you took over?
Well, the biggest, well, I won't say the biggest, but one of the first changes was that the 5-second count. Because if you closely guard it for 5 seconds now, that's a turnover. Right. A turnover, the other team gets the ball. And of course, when I first started, the three-point line wasn't there. And right now, I wish we could take up the three-point line until we play the ball games, because kids now, all they want to do is shoot the threes. In '89, we didn't have a three-point line, but I put down a line inside of what the three-point line is now, and those kids couldn't shoot. So that made them have a good mid-range game. Now kids don't want to work on mid-range.
They want that big three-point shot instead of the mid-range shot. And you hear the announcers talk a lot about that kid has got a good inside game or mid-range game.
Right.
And that's what you're talking about.
The other thing is rough play. They're trying to cut down on rough play. When I first started, you could get in and you could really play tough inside. Now, they don't want you to use the arm bar. And of course, they've changed the foul line. Where the big block is on the foul line, you no longer have a player down there to rebound. Yeah,
that's altogether different. I remember when I first started playing basketball, you had an offensive and defensive man had the two blocks. You wasn't the same team.
Right.
Now, I'm going to finish up here, but I want to talk a little bit about Alan Barber. Made all district as a freshman, was the player of the year this year as a sophomore. You didn't have a lot of height, but you got some coming in. Talk a little bit about what you expect your team to be for next year, Coach.
Okay, Anthony Barber is, I guess he's 6'1" sophomore. And they call him Big Cat. I don't know why. There's nothing big about him, but he's a tremendous ball player. And the thing I like about him the most is he will listen. He came in and was known as one of the quickest players that ever played in the district. And he can get to the basket, even though people know that he's going to drive.
He's going to go there, yeah.
But he's worked on his mid-range game, and he's working now more on his three-pointer. And he's the type of kid that will listen. That's the biggest thing.
Right.
And he's surrounded by some good young players like Jordan Baker, Trey Perry. These are sophomores also. Quinn Moore, another sophomore. And we've got a couple of pretty good juniors to go along with them. And hopefully, with hard work, especially in the weight room, okay, we can move it up a level.
Okay.
We've got players with talent. Again, some of them are stubborn, but they've got to get in that weight room, get stronger, and we will be in a really good situation because we won't have to put in a whole lot of different plays because they now have an idea of what they expect. And, you know, hopefully we can, you know, advance further into the region and, you know, do a good job. But one of the things we're going to have to do, hopefully get some size, and we've got a kid on the JV that's in 8th grade that's going to be a pretty good post player. So it helps to have somebody about 6'5", 230.
Yeah, so you can go inside out.
Inside out. There you go. That's right. That's the way I was taught. Play inside out.
Right. Well, Coach, I appreciate it. I want to thank you for tuning in to LSC and Sports Time. I want to thank my special guest, Walter Brower, and Hampton High School basketball coach. I'm Bob Hintz. Until next time.